The Lakers discussion, the Cavs discussion. You cover the Warriors every day. Does he have a point?
Yeah, hey, look, if we can sit here and predict that there will be no injuries from here up until 2019, then yes, I think he has a point. I think the Warriors are the clear-cut favorites. But the thing is, something always occurs, whether that's Stephen Curry slipping on a wet spot or whether that's the big head of Zaja Pachulia running into Kevin Durant's knee and prolonging him. So there's things that occur. We can't predict the future. And I think, look, I love what Boston has done. I like how Washington is getting better, and I like the moves of Houston and OKC being aggressive. So I don't want to disrespect the field. But if we can all say that, like I said, if there will be no injuries, then yes, I'll give it to Golden State. But that's not always the case.
See, I would disagree with Jeff Van Gundy. I would say forget about just 2018. Let's go to like 2020 at this point. Let's simulate the games like in NBA 2K18 or whatever.
Well, Klay Thompson may be with the Lakers at that point.
Well,
everyone apparently is going to Lakers.
In all seriousness, though, I do think he has a point. For the next couple of years, barring injury, they should be the team to beat. But then when Klay Thompson and Draymond potentially become free agents, we'll see what happens. But here's the other thing, Rachel, is that we always assume these dynastic-type teams are going to last for a decade, and they don't. Whether it was Shaq and Kobe, we thought they were going to dominate forever, right?
Thank you.
So you had them. Obviously, we talked about the LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. We thought they were going to dominate forever. Every era has a team that dominates for a certain stretch of time, but then something happens.
The reason that dynasties are rare are because they are hard. It is hard for teams to win over and over again. By the way, the Warriors, they haven't even won back-to-back yet, right? So we're just assuming this is going to happen. I absolutely believe Golden State's the favorite. You would be insane not to think that. But yes, things happen during a season that we can't predict. I wouldn't have guessed 6 months ago that Kyrie Irving would play for the Boston Celtics. I don't think anybody had that on their things to look for this summer column. So things happen. We don't know what's going to happen. That's what makes it fun. Just saying. There's no way to know how serious the hip is. And frankly, I'm not even sure Isaiah or the doctors at the Cleveland Clinic are going to know until they feel like he's recovered enough that he can get back on the court and we all find out how quick he is. That's the bottom line, right? If he still has the quickness and explosiveness that enable him at 5'9" to play in the NBA and be special, he will be fine. And if he doesn't, then he will be just another 5'9" guy. George, with the knowledge we have of Isaiah's injury, can we say at this point if it was still worth it for the Cavs to make this trade?
Yeah, and look, this is not meant as any disrespect to Isaiah Thomas, but I think he's the third best piece in that trade for Cleveland. When you look at the pick being number one, I don't think there's any question. We discussed that yesterday. I actually think Jay Crowder is a better fit for what Cleveland wants to do against Golden State in theory than what Isaiah Thomas brings to the table. Because, as Chris pointed out yesterday, they still have Derrick Rose. And look, we're talking about a guy who's a sack full of injuries too. But I think you can plug and play with LeBron with almost any player in the league. And I think they can survive without Isaiah Thomas.
41 in a finals game?
Yeah, listen, I understand that. But I just think that LeBron is a guy that can make so many guys around him better. He elevates everyone, and he's done that for his entire career. So I just don't think this is any different. I think you can plug almost any guy in that point guard position who's a capable scorer, and you'll be fine.
I concur. I think the pick was the most valuable piece in that whole trade. And I look at it from this standpoint. Whenever IT comes back, whether it's mid-season or in March, I think it's going to be hard for him to come into and take that starting spot. I think it'll be the Cleveland Cavaliers be too far down the road. I think he resorts back to the role that gained him some promise in this league, that six-man role. And I still think that'll bode well for his free agency, but he has to come back and play at a high level. I'm just not sure what role he'll have when and if he comes back.
That's a good point.
There's just too many variables in this for me to sit here and make any declarations because we don't know if that pick that you guys keep talking about, that could be the number 6 pick in the draft.
It could.
Right?
It could.
Everyone in their mind says, oh, number 1 pick because the Nets pick this year is a number 1 overall pick, but it could be a lower pick.
But the Cavs can sell that to teams right now as the number 1 pick.
There's a reason Danny didn't trade that pick until he knew it was the number 1 pick because teams were not biting as hard until after the lottery. So I don't know if that stands. I don't know how good or bad IT's hip is. Maybe he turns out that he comes back in February and he's fantastic. Then it looks great. I don't know if Jay Crowder is going to replaces Kyrie in kind of as much.
Oh, no, but Jay Crowder adds an element that they were lacking sorely
Kyrie,
last year,
sure, absolutely.
which is a two-way player, a 3-and-D type player. They need that against Golden State.
Exactly.
Some of the guys that they had kind of got a little long in the tooth, whether it was Richard Jefferson, Iman Shumpert, and whatnot, and they needed to replace that.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wonder if how much you're falling off on the other side of the ball. And again, if you have, there's
they're
so
falling.
many.
Yeah, right. So they're falling. For sure. They're falling.
so
There's no
many
doubt about
ifs.
that.
Let me ask you this real quick, though.
Yeah.
As far as point guards are concerned, like if you were LeBron, wouldn't the best point guard be like someone like Pat Beverly? I know he's not available, but a guy who can play defense and shoot
There
threes?
was a point Pat Beverly was available earlier this spring, and a lot of people wondered why the Cavs weren't more aggressive in going
He
after
fits
him. Of
perfectly.
course, that was a different management regime. And again, it's big ifs. That pick could end up being the #1 pick, and then everything looks very rosy. We just don't really know yet how these pieces are going to settle out. Isaiah Thomas is going to meet with the media in Cleveland tomorrow. We will certainly be having that on the jump. We will be maybe a little bit more informed on what is exactly going on with him medically. The story continues. So over the weekend, we continued to watch so many extraordinary residents and volunteers power the massive hurricane cleanup efforts down in Texas. Here at The Jump, we've been particularly following along with our guys, Tracy McGrady and Steven Jackson. Stack is from Port Arthur, Texas, and after the hurricane, he raced back to his ravaged hometown to help raise funds, distribute clothes and food. T-Mac and his wife, Clarenda, they've been remarkable also. During the worst flooding, they took people into their Houston home. And in the time since, they've been collecting and giving out donations to help with the rebuilding. And look, we've been seeing stuff like this over and over, right? All around the world of sports. The Texans' J.J. Watt, man, has been astounding, raising nearly $20 million in relief funds. Rockets owner Les Alexander, he donated $10 million just on his own. James Harden has been visiting shelters. He's put up another $1 million, and the list goes on and on. It has been a stark reminder of the role that athletes have at the very core of our communities. It's also instructive for those who spent so much of this summer telling athletes to stick to sports. I mean, stick to sports was always ridiculous to begin with. It implies athletes somehow just, materialize a tip-off for the amusement of the crowd, as opposed to being living, functioning human beings with as much of a stake in this country as anyone else. But in particular, the whole stick to sports thing is revealed as completely absurd when held up to the light of what we've been watching down in Texas. You can't applaud athletes for putting their passion and resources into addressing the very real and physical damage caused when a person loses their house to a flood, but criticize athletes for putting those same passions and resources into addressing the very real and physical damage caused when, say, an unarmed person is shot and killed. It can't be socially acceptable for an athlete to give out food at a hurricane shelter, but not acceptable for him or her to address a politician trying to defund school lunch programs. Either it's okay to care that kids have enough to eat, or it isn't. Either athletes should be invested in helping people in their communities, or they shouldn't. And no one on the outside gets to decide for them what kind of human suffering is okay to care about and what kind isn't. Personally, I'm thrilled to see so many athletes down in Texas caring, and so many athletes around the country caring about so many things. They make it better for the rest of us. Do you think that Melo's going to be in a Knicks uniform on opening night?
I do think he's going to be in a New York Knicks uniform. Look, the situation is still like the cards are pretty much in Carmelo's hands with the no trade clause. And one of the teams, the only team as of right now that he's really considering is the Houston Rockets. But there's other packages out there that's better for the Knicks. Portland Trailblazers have a package out there that's better for them, but Carmelo doesn't want to go and play in Portland.
Well, Damian and CJ were working on him this summer. It didn't work?
You saying working. You said it like they gave up.
Oh, okay. They
still
are
trying.
working.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Still
Well,
trying.
I don't know.
Look,
CJ is probably going to write and tell us after he sees this. But I thought that they were starting to at least try to make some inroads to sway him. But you haven't heard that anywhere but Houston he's focused on.
Yeah, I think he's locked on Houston.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I love Portland. I lived there for 4 years, but for some reason, players don't like going to Portland.
Yeah, it's a great city. I will say this, Rachel and Chris, it's the most Knicks thing ever, right? For this to still be, we're 6 weeks away.
Kyrie got traded, and Melo's still sitting there.
We're 6 weeks away from the start of the season, and Melo could still be in a Knicks uniform when he clearly doesn't want to be there. Like, what are you waiting for at this point? Because Phil Jackson ruined all your leverage.
I was going to say.
And that's not changing, though,
right.
at this point.
That's the thing. I mean, I've said it a bunch of times on this show. Gee, I'm shocked that if you spend an entire season bad-mouthing a player, it's hard to get other teams to pony up lots of money and lots of player options to trade for him. But that being said, I do think that we might see a third team involved. I'm not sure how long Carmelo can stay with the Knicks. You had Steve Mills writing a 1,000-word essay on the team company website. It didn't mention Carmelo once.
No.
I mean, it's hard to see them.
He's been erased, basically, from the Knicks season, and he may still be in their uniform, which is kind of wild. I've been monitoring Daryl Morey's Twitter. He tweeted yesterday a bunch of keys, but he was talking about Madison keys at the U.S. Open. So I was expecting Melo at that point.
Not Melo keys, not the same. I just think Carmelo's got to be sitting there and going, so Kyrie asked for a trade at the end of July, and by the end of August, it's already done.
Right.
What about me? What about me? If you're the Cavs, how cautious are you with this balancing act? Because you obviously want the hip to have time to heal, but you're talking about a new major component to a team that will need to be cooking by the end of the regular season and into the playoffs.
Be as cautious as you need to be, because you know what, Rachel? This team, even if Isaiah doesn't play one game, is still going to the NBA Finals. They're still better, in my opinion, than the Boston Celtics because they have LeBron.
That's quite a statement, Mr. Sedano.
That's fine. So take your time with him. LeBron is the most willing passer maybe in the game as far as the guys on the wing are concerned. So he's he's very good at integrating players, whether it's been at the trade deadline or whether it's been at the buyout deadline. He has to look at this as that type of situation. If IT's not ready till the All-Star break, then so be it. He's done this stuff before. I'll ride with that, and I think you'd be as cautious as possible.
Are you willing to go that far that if IT doesn't play a game,
no, I wouldn't go that far.
I'm bold. I'm bold. I get it.
I like what Boston is doing there. I wouldn't go that far.
a little credit there.
I will say this. I do agree with George in the fact that I think they have to take their time. Look, they have Derrick Rose on the roster. He can be a great placeholder, and he's looking to have a bounce-back season. But remember, we have to all remember, with that trade, the vital component in that trade was the pick.
Right.
Not necessarily Isaiah.
He might have been third on the list, to be honest.
Probably so.
Yeah.
And so we won't really know. And so he may come back halfway in the season, and that'll be good. He'll be plus LeBron James to get him integrated into the system. But as of right now, that pick is what's crucial for the Cavs. If they want any chance of retaining LeBron, they have to trade that pick to get somebody in return who's going to be a core piece right now. I think if they're settled on making sure that they have youth and assets and a promising future years down the road, I think you're going to cost yourself LeBron James. I really do think it's that serious. And LeBron doesn't. He embraces young guys, but he's not really all for playing with the young guys, trying to make he's all about championships right now.
Sure.
And there's all these rumors about Los Angeles Lakers, the Spurs. He wants to play right now, his stage of his career, wants to play where he has a serious chance to compete for a championship. Now, if you had that number one pick, you got guys out there. Look, Anthony Davis out there floated, Andrew Wiggins out there in Minnesota. So Cavaliers have to really look hard and see where they want to go. Do they want to try to retain LeBron James at all costs, or are they going to hold on to that pick just in case something catastrophe happens? I'm going to give it to him. I got to give it to him. I think, as of right now, I think Chris Paul, I think John Wall takes that side of the ball seriously on the defensive end.
He does, no question.
And John Wall, and I think, look, Chris Paul, where he's at in age right now, I think he's limited as to what he can do. Look at Steph Curry. Steph Curry eats him up for dinner all the time, but he does that to everybody else. So I'll give it to Wall.
You know who's capable of doing this? And I still think it's CP3, but Russell Westbrook is capable of doing this. He's got the athleticism. He's got the length. We attribute certain defensive abilities to him that he hasn't shown necessarily on the floor. And look, he's a tremendous basketball player. He's a top 5 basketball player. But if he applied himself on defense too, like John does, he would win the MVP almost every year.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Russ, right? Because you've got to think now he can expend less energy offensively with Paul George there, right?
But back to the point guard talk as well. You can't stop a dominant point guard anyways in this league.
Right.
So that's
You're
tough.
limiting him at best.
Exactly.